What is up, everybody? I'm Get Flanked, and I saw a conversation between Bikini Body and Kudos the other day on Twitter that got my siege brain working. And I wanted to sit down today and talk about a couple of ideas that I've had as a result of that conversation. And they go around Zero, Sam Fisher, and a possible rework that could make him more effective. Now, you might be sitting there thinking that Zero does not need a buff or rework in any way. He's fine the way he is. So let's jump into that first, because that was a large part of the conversation they were having. Bikini thinks that Zero is fine, doesn't need touched. Kudos was making the argument that he thinks he needs a buff. And honestly, they both make some good points. I personally fall into the category that Zero on paper has the potential to be one of the strongest operators in the game. I made a video in the past talking about how Zero is one of the better solo queue operators in the game. I mean, he's got two really good gun options, great optic attachment options. He's got the gun 6, he's got hard breach, and his gadget can clear utility as well as give information. There's just so much potential there. When you look at Zero on paper, he looks like he should be one of the best operators in the game. However, when you look at the win delta, he's not performing that well. And he's also not an operator that the pros are picking up. And that's not the end all be all. We see cases where operators aren't picked, and it doesn't mean that they're weak necessarily. They just aren't fitting into the meta right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean they need a buff or anything like that. It just means that their time hasn't quite come yet. But Zero's been out for a while now. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think he does need a buff, but I do recognize that I think the average player struggles with getting value out of his gadget. Now, Bikini makes the argument that that's because the average player is not being smart when using his gadget. And you do see a lot of people just run up to the site and shoot one into a reinforced wall. It makes that loud noise. The defender's right there and can shoot it instantly. And they don't really get a chance to get any utility out of that device when using it that way. And that isn't the best way to use it. There's a lot better ways to be more creative with the use of his gadget, for sure. But we can sit here and blame the players for not using the gadget well, but at the end of the day, if the operator isn't being used at the highest level of play as well as by the average player, then at some point we have to look and say, okay, well, maybe there is something with this gadget that we can look at to make it a little bit more accessible. And that's where my idea comes in for a rework to Zero, or possibly even a new operator. So if you're somebody who is sitting there saying that Zero is fine, doesn't need touched, hear me out, because this might just be better as a new operator gadget as a whole. And I'd love to get your feedback on that idea as well. So this idea comes from using Zero and recognizing that it can be tough to get in position to use his gadget. It's easy to set it up for a flank watch when your team has map control, but I was thinking about Valkyrie, my favorite operator in the game, and why is it so much easier to get great utility out of her cameras than it is out of Zero's? And one of the big differences that jumps out to me is that Valkyrie gets to set up her cameras on the map during the prep phase when there's no threat to her life, and she gets to choose where they are and can predict where the push is going to come from and put the cameras in a position where they're going to give valuable intel. What if Zero could set up his Argus cameras in the prep phase by using his drone? That's really the idea here, is what if Zero could deploy his Argus cameras through a drone? And I don't think you give him all. I think that maybe you give him three Argus cameras that he can deploy via drone. It wouldn't be 3 per drone. It would be 3 cameras that he can deploy via drone. And then he probably has 3 more on his body. So that would be a buff. I mean, that's 6 total cameras compared to 4 that he has now. And maybe you can tweak those numbers. Maybe it's 2 on a drone, 2 on his body, something like that. But the idea here is that during the prep phase, Sam, Zero could be setting up those Argus cameras in good locations with the drone without any fear for his life, be able to get them deployed in a place where they're far away from where the defenders are so they don't hear that loud noise and they're not as easy to find, and then be able to draw on those cameras throughout the course of the round to get information later on. I like the potential with this idea, whether it's a zero rework or a new operator. I like the idea of, during the prep phase, being able to go to a popular defender rotate, set up a camera there, and then you could even drive your drone back outside and then just hop on that camera and see if a defender rotates up that way. Picture like Oregon, big tower of stairs. You come in one of those doors, you shoot a camera on the wall or somewhere there, or maybe if you try to hide it, you get your drone back out into safety, you hop on that camera, and you can tell if a defender goes up to the top of big tower and make that call. That would be really cool. That would be something that I think has a lot of potential there. Now, there are a couple problems with this idea. Number one would be attacker repick. If you pick zero and you go in and you deploy these cameras, you can't just switch into another operator after you deployed all that utility. So the way I imagine this working is with zero, you pick them and then you go into the prep phase. Once you deploy a camera, attacker repick is locked for you and you can't switch anymore. I think that could solve that problem. Whether this is a new operator or zero, that could work. I guess the other problem could be, how do you logically make sense of the cameras going from drone to drone? You know what I mean? Like, if you can deploy a total of 2 cameras on either drone, not on both drones, but on either drones, you have the option of deploying that total number of 2 cameras. How does it logically make sense that the inventory is being taken from one to the other? That could be kind of messy. That's not a big deal to me, but I understand, like, if I'm in charge of the game, like, that would probably be something I'd want to find a clean way to relay. And I don't know that there is. So do you make it like only the prep phase drone has the ability to deploy cameras? And then you run into a situation where if your prep phase drone gets shot, then you lose all that utility, and now zero is left with 2, and that could end up being a nerf to zero instead of a buff. So yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, as none of my ideas ever are. But I guess at the end of the day, I just really like the idea of having an attacker that can deploy some utility during the prep phase, because defenders can. That's always been one of the big benefits that defenders have had, is that they get to deploy all of their utility while they have complete map control and zero threat from the attackers. And I'd love to see an attacker who could do something similar. And it's just cameras, and yeah, they can maybe drop a mirror or something like that. That could happen, but I don't know. I think this is an interesting concept that I'd like to see how it would turn out. What do you all think? Is there any potential here? Do you think we can get past the attacker repick and the kind of logic aspect of this to make it make sense in game, and not be like too cumbersome for players to kind of grasp? So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this is a zero rework idea? Do you think this is a new operator idea? Do you think it's just a bad idea overall? I'll be looking through those comments. Let me know your thoughts. I will see you on the next one.